Welcome to Perspectives on Discoverability. If great content can't be found or isn't found by children, is there even a point in making it? And as much as artistic endeavour in itself is rewarding, we all want our stuff to be found by the kids that we are making it for, whether that's toys, books, apps, TV content, whatever. So we are going to discuss the issue of discoverability with Warren Buckley from the Children's Tech Review and Stuart Rosen, who is Head of Discoverability for the BBC.
Okay, so my name's Stuart Rosen. I'm the Head of Discovery for BBC Children's. What that means in shorthand, if you like, is that I effectively oversee all of the platforms where we meet the audience. So the scheduling and publishing of our two channels, CBeebies and CBBC, plus the children's section of BBC iPlayer. Also oversee Newsround, that's the broadcast and the website, as well as all of our CBeebies apps and our websites across there. And also the presentation areas in and around sort of the links, so CBeebies links and CBBC, where Philip Schofield started out back in the day. And all of the sort of the digital editorial strategy across social media and YouTube.
I'm Warren Buckleitner, editor of Children's Technology Review, and I also work as a curator for several competitions, including the Bologna Children's Book Fair. I've coordinated the Bologna Ragazzi Digital Award, working with jurors and so on, and been looking at a lot of products over the years. I also am a assistant professor at the College of New Jersey, and I teach digital design, and I play the trumpet. I try to play the trumpet.
I'm Amanda Gummer. I'm a psychologist specialising in child development and play, and I'm the founder of the Good Toy Guide and the Good App Guide, which provide online reviews for parents and anyone who's interested in finding out how their apps and toys help kids develop different skills. So it's my pleasure to host the session today, and I'm going to start by asking you, Stuart, what's the biggest issue with discovery in your area of work?
I think the biggest challenge we have is just probably the same as a lot of people really, is just how fragmented the market is. Now we're quite lucky that we oversee CBeebies and CBBC, and in the world of CBeebies, it's often the parent making the choice, and we know that in that area we are market leaders. We know full well that there's almost like a default setting for parents to turn to CBeebies. I think our biggest challenge is once those kids get older and they get in charge of their remote control and they get their own phone. So CBBC, where it's for sort of 6 to 12-year-olds, has a far harder challenge than for preschoolers, largely because kids are maturing into mobile phone spaces at different rates. And once they're in control, they open up the world to Netflix and social media at 10, 11, even if we think they shouldn't, around social, but we know they're on there. So they're sort of out into this big digital wide world and sort of shouting about our content, even though, as I say, for CBBC, we're fortunate to be market leaders in that space. It's never been more competitive. So it's a real challenge for us, just kids effectively just doing this in every direction.
Fair enough. So it makes it harder to sort of stand out from the masses, if you like. And there's a lot of content out there, isn't there?
Yeah, and there's never, I think it's, if you're a consumer or you're a member of the audience now, there's never been a greater time. We hark back about the golden age of television. I think this is the golden age of content. You've never had so much wonderfully produced, expensive programs or apps or anything just at your fingertips, and the choice is huge. And for us, what that's really meant is kind of pulling back in and focusing in on our really big things. So trying to, whether we take Blue Peter, for example, which is our oldest and well-loved TV show, and trying to spread that out across numerous platforms and make huge events out of things where we can use the power of our social media, the power of our CBBC website to try and build a single brand. Whereas I think 10 years ago, before the explosion of different media, it was far easier to have lots of different shows. Now I think it's very much about putting your eggs in fewer baskets.
Great, thank you. Warren, what about you? What are your issues with discoverability in the app space?
Well, I think that there's we're living in a very exciting time, and those of us that are a little bit older we know that we're living in the future now. We've got devices that can give you delight the eyes and ears and senses and all these pipelines. So it is, in a lot of ways, the good news is, if you're an author, if you're somebody that's got an idea and you want to reach an audience, you have more tools. Your toolkit's never been greater, and there are more pipelines that you can use to get that stuff. And also authoring tools have gotten easier to use, and you can use a stylus and draw, and so it's from that point of view, it's very exciting. With all the riches comes all of the problems, and in terms of curation, I never would have expected 20 years ago that our biggest problem would be too much stuff, and that traditional newspapers and critics and people who have an objective point of view would have such a hard time getting their voices heard. And so I see the curation system pretty much broken, and everyone's kind of in this fast food media mode, just grabbing the easiest thing to get on a screen. The same screen that can deliver interactive can also deliver video, and video is so much more. Who doesn't want to sit down and look at we are just watching How to Train a Dragon. It's beautiful stuff, but that drowns out everything else. So yeah, it's a crazy time. It's an interesting time. I think that people like myself who are trained in child development need to be strong advocates for quality, and we need to, we're in a space where profit drives just about everything. And when profit meets child development, it's not pretty. And so, that those issues are the big challenges that we have.
And do you think that with all of the good quality content that's coming out now, and like you say, it's never been a better time to be in the audience, making good quality apps and good quality content and getting those in front of sufficient eyeballs and everything is a challenge. Do you think that's helped or hindered by licenses? Do you think if you can design a really good gameplay or a really good storyline narrative and get it aligned with a brand, does that help with discoverability?
Yeah, absolutely.
But we've seen licenses sort of taken a bit of a tumble recently. So there are some of the big licenses haven't fared as well in terms of.
Yeah, over the years, licensed characters have been the kiss of death for a lot of products. The best results happen when a very talented digital designer bumps into a really good license and can use the license as a springboard. And one of my favorites is Emmett O'Neill at Story Toys, because he worked for years with different licenses, but when he ran into Eric Carle, he really flipped the whole process over and took Eric Carle's beautiful work and made it so the child can drive that stuff. And so we need to, sadly, digital or big licenses can stomp out the creativity and add a lot of constraints. And so I do see a lot of bad quality interactive stuff that comes tied with famous names, famous characters. I don't know, Stuart, what you think about that, but that's my take as a reviewer.
Yeah, I think from our point of view, it always comes down to how good the stuff is that you've got on a really basic level. I think you can sometimes get blinded by fame or blinded by a famous name, but actually, whether the product is digital or it's a TV show, the quality of the storytelling and the participatory nature of it, and in digital products, the ease of use. I mean, we've literally just relaunched our most popular preschool app, which is called Playtime Island. because it was built a few years ago, and actually, as we've iterated the product over the years, we kind of got to the place where there were 17 steps between opening it up and getting to a game. And actually, that's just almost happened just over time as we've added things on. And we've now designed that right back down. So you just open it up, you do one thing, and you're in the product. And it's the understanding of things like that and the usability, I think, that's still absolutely key.
I think with usability as well, it's making sure that the play pattern matches the brand values and the narrative, and that it fits the age as well. I mean, I remember ages ago having, it doesn't matter how good it is and how well publicised and how easily it is for people to discover it, when they can't actually discover the gameplay because they can't enter the app because there was a preschooler who can't read the word play. Those kind of things, the sort of usability issues, I think, have a massive impact on discoverability. And I think with the connected world that we're in now, that word of mouth, social stuff going viral, you've got to make that you've got to increase your chances for that to happen as much as possible. And the usability is the kiss of death if you get that wrong, I think. How do you think the current COVID-19 context has changed your ability or apps content's ability to be discovered?
I was hoping you'd bring that up because it shines a very stark or a bright light on the people who have access to screens and people who don't have access to screens. And all of a sudden, screen time used to be sort of a dirty word, and nowadays it's a necessity. And it's not just a screen, it's a connected screen. And it's very important that we make sure, we being adults and decision makers, make sure that all children have access to a quality connected screen, because it is a matter of how, it's connected to a livelihood, it's connected to culture, it's connected to ideas. And those people that don't have that right now in the United States and around the world, who are isolated, who don't have libraries and schools, know how important it is to have access. So there's a great lesson that we've all gotten, all educators, librarians in the United States from this. And it's a rather rude wake-up call, but it's one that was important. And what we all hope will happen is when we come out of this is a more intelligent conversation about what screen time is, and thinking about the quality of the time, whether or not it's on a screen or off a screen, and also the access issues. Those are becoming critical.
I think that's right. Let's face it, in a rather polarized world in lots of ways at the moment, the sort of that gap between accessibility to the best broadband or struggling on a 3G or a 4G signal, if you've even got that, is huge. And I think the impact for us in the BBC is that we've seen our audience turn in huge numbers to screens, but interactive screens in a sense of, just to give you a really couple of easy examples. So obviously in the UK we have BBC iPlayer, and prior to lockdown starting and coronavirus starting, on CBBC, the proportion of overall viewing that iPlayer would make up compared to the TV channel would be round about 30 or 40% iPlayer and about sort of 60, 70% on the CBBC TV channel. During lockdown, that's totally flipped on its head. So we saw in May that the proportion of iPlayer viewing for CBBC was 65%. So there's an incredible about face has happened. And we were already seeing that change anyway, but what we've seen is a huge acceleration towards both on demand, but also some of our digital products. So the Newsround website, and Newsround is more famously known as a TV bulletin, but actually in 2020, it's a huge website that also does a TV bulletin. And that's sort of seen record numbers of like 1.5, 1.7 million users some weeks. So it's been an absolutely incredible surge towards all of our digital products. And as Warren says, good broadband during that is absolutely key. So it's a real challenge, I think, in the UK, and I'm sure in the US as well.
And I think with the one of the trends I've seen in the lockdown is the increased sort of digitalization, if you like, of the older generation, so the grandparents and even the sort of older parents of teenagers getting more comfortable with the social media, the technology that they need to be able to communicate, do their Zoom calls at work or whatever. And I think that has made, whilst there's a them and us on the sort of accessibility, I think it's narrowed the them and us issue across ages. And I think what that does is it means that when you are communicating and trying to be discovered as an app, you now can talk to the grandparents about it. You can talk to the parents. You're not just relying on the kids' pester power. And I think for certainly educational apps and apps and content that is educational or developmentally beneficial, I think you've kind of opened up the audience to the adults a bit more as well. Okay, so I'm going back to a point that you made earlier, Warren. I think it is important as an industry for us to champion good quality content, and I think it's so important that we give the people who are producing that the leg up. So what do you think as an industry we should be doing to support that innovation, the quality products, and not just that sort of label slapping, rinse and repeat stuff that we see sometimes?
There's got to be a better mouthpiece for the child development voice and people who are. Well, yeah, we are trying. We're trying very, very hard. I mean, it's been pretty much my whole career because I'm very excited by the potential, but it's been disappointing because there's toll keepers, there's the toll booths, run by Google and Apple and Amazon. They're very business centric. The decisions about what gets featured, what gets rated, Apple even calls, they give editors choices. Well, who are the editors? And they don't have the editorial standards that the BBC follows or the New York Times follows. And there's been this dilution. And I think there's too much control by too few people who have business agendas rather than child agendas. And the frustrating part for me is that, and I'm sure, Amanda, you would agree, that there's great content out there. And that content's laying buried somewhere. And, there's a lot at stake here. I was just spent 2 months quarantined with my young grandson, and I designed an iPad just for him, and I found just beautiful apps that delighted him, and it reminded me of the power of this medium and why I went into it initially. It's such a powerful tool. The fact that you can take your finger and you can explore how an orchestra works, or with Tiny Bop, he was cleaning a fish, cleaning the barnacles off a fish, and he's 18 months old, but he can do it, and the wonder and delight as he discovers this new stuff is unlike any other medium, and we can't forget that. We have to remember why we're in this space and who we're working for. And the person we're working for is that 18-month.
So do you think there's a piece of work then to be done in educating the parents about what to look for the children? Or do you think, maybe Stuart, do you think going straight for the kids and making sure that there is an onus or a responsibility on the industry to put out good stuff for the kids so that we sort of cut through some of the noise?
I think talking to the adults is absolutely crucial. Thinking about what we do in children's and education within the BBC. So we've got one of the things that we do that's most loved by parents is the CBeebies grown-ups Facebook group, where we kind of talk to parents in a sense that we all love CBeebies, but we're also in this challenge of parenting together, and it's a real sort of natural conversation. And I think bringing parents along so that they know what you stand for, they sort of trust what you stand for, so that then they trust you with their children. I think that's a huge thing for CBeebies and the BBC, is that we've got that unique place of being trusted by parents with their children. And we'll often sort of hear that, we're a great babysitter or whatever. Now, nobody wants to be a great babysitter, but it's also quite a nice compliment that they're happy just to put you in front of their content, and they know that they'll get, educational content. They know they'll get a good mix of what we do. Because I think it's interesting picking up on what Warren was saying and thinking about the needs of the child. And we're in this really challenging space for us where we're doing public service. We're thinking about early years learning and early years education. We're also now starting to think about, what does digital public service mean in that space? So how do we teach children how to be safe on the internet? And we've got sort of an Own It website and an Own It app where we're trying to teach those sort of early years mobile phone users how to do it in a sensible way, what you should and shouldn't say in that sort of space. So that whole sense of, we need to educate them at the same time as entertaining them and even just reaching them. And now that whole idea of, as Warren says, battling with, we talk about App Store optimization in a way that we were talking about search engine optimization 2 years ago. And now it's just a battle to be at the top so that you can be found. And then the kids can discover what you've got. But if you can't be discovered in the first place, then you could have the greatest app in the world or the greatest bit of content in the world, and it'll just, you may as well throw it in a field.
So is there something that sort of industry players with the clout of somebody like the BBC should be doing or could be doing to get those really good apps up and out and at the forefront of people's sort of on their radar?
Yeah, I think so. And I think if you think about just what we do in our space, we've sort of got 4 preschool apps. We don't think we can add any more to that, because it's at what point do you reach almost your own audience saturation point. So we've got a Storytime app, which is clearly all about reading, and we want to rebuild that and focus on helping kids read. A Go Explore app, which is kind of almost a preparing you for school, early years education, playing, but we've got a Playtime app, which is still lots about, just enjoying yourself and learning at the same time. And then we've got a Go Create app, which, Get Creative app, which I think is arguably the most fun to use, because that's where you can draw music. And Warren talking about his 18-month-old grandson is, you can draw music and draw a picture out of music, and it's an incredible thing. So we've got a real diverse range of what we can do, but you can only stretch yourself so far, because you've got to get, high up in the App Store. You've got to get the 4-star rating, all of these things that now sort of score us every day. And if you don't achieve them, you're kind of wasting your time.
Fair enough. So just to finish with then, what would your takeaway tips be for somebody who's creating content in whatever form that might be, on how to maximise the chances of them getting discovered and improving the discoverability of their work? Warren, do you want to start?
Enter contests and submit stuff to the Good Play Guide and Children's Technology Review and reviewers. I mean, there are a few people that read our stuff. I look at 3 new products every week, and try to give it a fair shake. And the Bologna Prize is free to enter, and all you need to do is submit codes, and that gets it in front of 3 jurors. And you, even if your product isn't going to win, you get it out there. So I think there's something to that old-fashioned shoe leather where you just spend the time shooting it out there. Be an advocate for your stuff. Oh, another suggestion is keep your eyes open. There's so many people that make something that's already been made, and it's important to, if you're going to go into the interactive space, to kind of understand what's been done before, and make sure you're not replicating the wheel.
Yeah. And seeing as Warren did sort of digital products and apps, I'll do something more around programs and thinking about how content makers, I think, should approach when they're making programs now, is thinking about how their program will get discovered. And we've done a lot of work on iPlayer recently, where we've effectively invested more in the quality of pictures that we get from sets. I think it's really important increasingly for TV producers to think about how they will promote their show when it hits the platform that they know it's, whoever's commissioned it is thinking about what is the program title? What are the great images? What is the great imagery of that? Which I think now within a digital, like a video on demand platform, is probably just as important as a day or 2 day scripting. And I think what we've done is we see TV producers create the most beautiful show, get to the end of production, then go, right, what are all the assets we need to promote this thing? And one of the things that we've seen just through doing a bit of A/B testing is that a great image, and anybody at Netflix would also tell you this, a great image could give you 50% more audience to your show. So it's really valuable. If you want your show recommissioned, or if you want an audience in the first place, think about how it will be promoted when it lands, rather than that whole sense of, well, we've done this beautiful show now, or we just need to knock out some pictures, or we need to think about the promotion of it. I think it's right at the point of commissioning and dreaming up a show or an idea to think about what it will look like at the end of the line.
I think that's so true, and I think we did some research into the icons in the app stores and the difference that they can make.
Mm-hmm.
Just people just clicking on them or not. And I think the other thing for me is the messaging. It needs to be crystal clear. You really need to understand the brand values, the play patterns, the age, the target market. You need to have that really clear in your head so that within the first 15 seconds of engaging with any communication that you're putting out about your product, people get it, they understand who it's for, they know whether it's for them or not, and they know what they're getting. So I think that you really drilling down and understanding what it is you're making and being able to then communicate that really clearly, I think it's the laser approach rather than the sort of scattergun. I think it has more cut through.
And then another thing to add is that thinking from the perspective of the Bologna Ragazzi Award is that if you're going to build a house, the foundation of the house is, if it's digital, is the story, is the narrative. And you need to have good narrative, in whatever form it is. And there's really these old-fashioned ingredients that I see digital people forgetting, and that is you've got to have good illustrations and a good story. If you've got those two things, whether they're licensed characters or not, well, I can say this. If you don't have those things, I can tell you right away. Then you got to have somebody who knows how to understand the psychology of interactive design. That's the usability. That's the using the right tools, matching whether it's Unity or some other tool to make that story come to life. But too frequently in these discussions, we forget about just the old-fashioned quality, a good narrator. There's also localization issues. It's a big deal making digital stuff. It's very difficult to do when you consider all the variables. But you can't forget about the basics, the basic stuff.
Too true. Well, I want to thank you both for your time today. And it's going to be an odd CMC, I think, this year, but it's going to be interesting. So hopefully we can do this all again in person next time.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I made it. My first children's media conference. So Greg will be proud.
If you ever make it across Warren, we'll have to go for a pint in Sheffield.
Would love that.